Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before we begin, let me introduce myself. I'm Roikhatun, I'm Student Education Department of Win Malang. As you can see on the screen, our topic today is Takhrij hadith. I will begin by presenting the meaning of Takhrij hadith in etymology and terminology. Then, I will continue by explaining about the history of Takhrij hadith development, which obtained from the opinion of the scholars. And finally, I will explain the methods of Takhrij hadith with conventional and unconventional or web. Structuring a presentation. In my presentation, I will focus on three major issues. The first, I will explaining about the meaning of Takhrij hadith. Second, explain about history of Takhrij hadith development. And third, I explain a method of Takhrij hadith. My presentation will take about 10 minutes. Okay. Don't worry about the notes. I have put all important statistics on a handout for you. There will time for question after my presentation. According to an article I read recently, I had this expert, Noor Yuslim, also argues that the essence of Takhrij hadith is the tracing of hadith in first books, and as the original source for the book, it is explained in detail of the information observation of sanad hadith. In this part of my presentation, I would like to tell you about the meaning of Takhrij hadith. In etymology, the word Takhrij comes from Arabic, kharaja. This pronunciation is masdar of fi'il madi kharaja yukharriju takhrijan, which means to take something out of its place. The word Takhrij itself means to take out, al-zuhur showing. Takhrij hadith methodology expert Mahmud Al-Tahan said that in addition to the meaning of issuing, accustoming, and training, it can also be interpreted as ijtima'a amrayni mutadadaini fi shay'in wahid, the gathering of two opposing matters in one problem. Meanwhile, in terms of terminology, Takhrij according to Mahmud Al-Tahan in Ali Akbar books provide the meaning that is state the place of the hadith in its original source, which is followed by a complete series of sanad when the hadith was issued. Also explain the level of quality when needed. Let's move on to the next point, development of Takhrij hadith. In the book Usul Takhrij wa Dirasa al-Asanid by Mahmud Al-Tahan, it is stated that the previous scholars were very familiar with the source of hadith which were so extensive, so that in mentioning hadith, they did not find it difficult because they already knew and understood in the books. Especially regarding the source of the Sunnah, their memories are undoubtedly. They do have a very strong memories. In the past, to find out the hadith in detail, a search was carried out by issuing tradition from scholars who had met the requirement as raw material, where this method was carried out as well as census, namely tracing one by one the scholars who had hadith in first place and fulfilling the requirements of the narration to obtain complete information about the hadith. During the time of Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, and other Imam Sita, this method was practiced. As the times progressed, hadith scholars began to experience a little difficulty in explaining and referring to the hadith book. Due to the diminishing number of hadith scholars and their relatively few memories, mainly regarding the source of hadith are the used as the basis for Sharia, such as history, fiqh, and interpretation, contemporary ulama find it very difficult until scholars emerged who had hit enthusiasts took the initiative to maintain hadith through Takhrij hadith until the book of Takhrij hadith was published. Hadith Takhrij is carried out with the aim of knowing the authenticity of the hadith, whether the hadith is accepted or rejected. Now, in this way, we can clearly know the origin of the hadith and its quality. So much for method of Takhrij hadith among others, based on narrators from the Sahabat level. In this way, it is only specified if someone already knows the names of the narrators at the first level, namely the companions. So if the name of friend are not listed in hadith, this method cannot be used. In this method, we need 3 works of hadith to help the presentation pentakhrijan process in this method. 1. Al-Masanid Musnad, 2. Al-Ma'ajim, 3. The books of Al-Atraf. The advantage of using this method is that it is able to provide proximity information to readers through mustakhraj hadith and books. But the weakness of using this method is that if you don't really know the names of your friends, and also in each chapter of this book, it summarizes several issues that are not fixated as on just on one problem. This is methods. When using this method, we can use several book categories as help, namely 1. Using several books that are well known with spread among the public. 2. Using a book of hadith that with made based of the alphabetical order of the dictionary. 3. Index the great names that have been compiled by scholars on certain books or main books. Through information technology, the digitization method uses the software is able to display first hadith books and interpretation digitally, so that at this time, Takhrij hadith activities feel easier with the emergence of this technology or an information-based method. Among the application that can be used as Takhrij hadith is Litwa Herlem. The application uses Indonesian, making it easier for the user, especially in Indonesian. This application has started running which translate and digitize for this app. As I mentioned before, the meaning of Takhrij hadith is to search for the original source of the hadith in the main book to obtain complete information about the hadith, but the sanad and the hadiths that are sold and even its position. And history of Takhrij hadith development of Takhrij hadith is different from the other hadith science. And history of Takhrij hadith development is Takhrij hadith is different from other hadith science. This Takhrij hadith development later, but in practice, Takhrij hadith was already carried out the beginning of development of ulumul hadith and methods of Takhrij hadith by convenience, by conventional and web. I had like to sum up the main points. The conclusion is that Takhrij hadith, the search for the original source of the hadith in the main book to obtain complete information about the hadith, but the sanad and the hadith also and even its position. The scholars differ in their Takhrij hadith in historical. In addition, in the process of Takhrij, muhaddithin scholars use several methods including based on narrators from the companion level. The first lafaz in the hadith, lafaz that are rarely used, the hadith editorial, themes and the quality of the hadith seen from their sanad and age. And through information technology, the methods were made by the scholars to make it easier for Muslims to study the hadith according to existing condition. Well, this brings me to the end of my presentation. Before I stop, let me to throw my main points again. The meaning of Takhrij hadith is searched for the original source of the hadith in the main book to obtain complete information about the hadith, both the sanad and the hadith that are sold and even its position. And history of Takhrij hadith development is Takhrij hadith is different from other hadith signs. This Takhrij hadith development later, but in practice Takhrij hadith was already carried out the beginning of the development of ulumul hadith and methods of Takhrij hadith by conventional and web. Thank you for your attention and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.